Tonight on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, we are joined by Mike Dempsey of Jaguars Today. But first, our guys, Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You were joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, where in the world am I? What's going on here?
I don't know, but I don't see any pretty mahogany shells or nothing. This doesn't feel good. Work's getting in the way of our fun here, Greg. I don't like that.
Way too much work. I'm going to back-to-back. I'm going to be traveling this week and next week while we get ready for these shows. But luckily, despite my work travel endeavors, I am here for you. I am in my hotel room ready to go live to Bills Mafia because, that's what's important.
It's the most important. But really quick here before we get to our guest and this week's show, how did you enjoy 7 hours of commercial-free, nonstop football, stress-free football here over the past weekend? It's kind of nice early to get we got the prime time and don't have to deal with and get to sit back and watch.
We're going to flip it both ways. So last week was extra nice because we already had the W in hand. So there was zero anxiety. We just got to enjoy watching all the other games, watch all the crazy different pieces. Nish, I appreciate that. I kind of felt a little bit of a Brett Coleman vibe here in my setup with the windows behind here. So I appreciate the shout out. It was a lot easier. So this week, I'm going to enjoy it again. I'm going to have my quad box up. I have my projector with the quad box, and then I have my separate TV.
We had the Deca box at one point on the red zone.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was 10. Scott Hansen losing his mind. So it's going to be cool again, but it's not exactly the same when we haven't played yet.
Right.
So we don't have the complete stress-free viewing experience because we still have to go out and get that W when the Monday night one comes. But now we're on the Mafia double-decker Monday night double header. So we have two games on Monday night. That's going to be a little bit weird and different. So
a little nice that we get an early primetime post-game show though.
Yes, I'll take the 7:30 kickoff. I'm sure our guest, Mike Dempsey, I'm sure will appreciate that as well. Not quite as late. Yeah, he can stay up and actually watch the first half, maybe.
And before we get to Mike real quick, I just want to say, in watching some stress-free football, I did enjoy it because football is awesome, and some football is better than no football at all. But I gotta say, the Bills have ruined football for me a little bit for other football because I was watching a lot of games.
There's some ugly football.
Yeah, I was like, why isn't it easy for these guys to do these things? So not to be a cocky Bills fan, but they definitely have ruined other, because it used to be during the drought years though, Greg, I'd watch all these other games and be like, oh, why can't we do those? Like, why can't we run a successful? Why can't we do this? And now it's kind of flipped where I'm watching these other teams struggle. And it's like, wow, it's not as easy for them. So that was my experience for the weekend. But let's get to it. We got a new game to get to, a new week to get to here.
Absolutely. So tonight with his Cover One debut, we are welcoming our new friend, Mike Dempsey of Jaguars Today. Mike, how we doing, sir?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Doing all right until we run into the Jaguars. You guys, oh man, it's like I have my sign here for those that are watching and not listening. Trap game warning. Nothing feels good. Like Greg said, there's just a nervous feeling when we do this.
Well, right now that would have to be what it is, the way the Jags are playing. The Jags are so dysfunctional right now that, there's some institutional memory of how well they performed against Buffalo in recent years. And they have, and so they can lean on that. There's a lot of players that have had success against this Bills team, but there are not a lot of players that are having success on this Jags team right now, particularly offensively. It has been just a freak show at times. And it's, we talked about it today for 2 hours. It's somebody different seemingly play in, play out, whether it's the offensive line or Trevor Lawrence himself or the receivers dropping balls or guys not lining up right. And, the head coach needing to call timeouts before the play clock runs out after you make a big play. And it's been a high level of dysfunction. So despite the recent history, the Bills are getting the Jags at a good time.
Yeah. I mean, I still have that Calvin Ridley slot fade burned into my memory. That
ETN run too, where Micah Hyde's just so slowly chasing him. Oh God.
I can't deal with it. So Mike, I think the Jags were coming into this season kind of in the middle. They were a team that everybody acknowledged, hey, the AFC stacked this year, and everybody knows there's probably 9 or 10 teams with genuine playoff aspirations, and that means 3 of those teams aren't going to make it. And the Jaguars were certainly in that top group with playoff aspirations, hoping that this next season with Peterson and kind of really having things under wraps, ready to go with Trevor Lawrence kind of stepping into his own. There was some level of expectation, but a lot of attention on the Houston Texans and their run last year, the excitement of Anthony Richardson coming back, the additions made on Tennessee's defense. So I think there was a little bit under the radar for the Jags. Obviously, you start out, you have the lead against Miami. The ETN fumble, I'm sure, you've talked about more times than you want to repeat again, and let Miami come back. Then a weird game with Cleveland where Cleveland's offense couldn't get things going, but their defense kept them in the game. Where are Jags fans right now? Where's the mindset on what this season, has on a frustrating start, but not disasters of games, just games you couldn't close out? Where are the fans' minds right now on what this team is and what the expectations are?
They're frustrated, right? They're disappointed. If the Jags last year were hosting Monday Night Football with an 8-3 record against Cincinnati, if they win that game, at that point, they'd been the number 1 seed in the AFC. Trevor Lawrence got injured again. He ended up dealing with 4 separate injuries down the stretch. CJ Beathard closed that game. They missed a field goal late that they would have won it, and it went to overtime, and they lost. If the Jags had won any of their 5 games that they lost out of the last 6 last year, they would have won the division. And but they didn't, granted. But I think the perception coming into the season would be a little bit different. Okay, the Texans are on the come, but the Jags are back-to-back division champs. But they obviously didn't fulfill that, right? So that was one way of looking at it. They gave a lot of contract extensions out this offseason to some of their key players, and they signed a lot of guys from winning organizations, including Buffalo, with Mitch Morse and Gabe Davis becoming a part of it. But, the frustrating thing is, you're right. Look, they had Miami. They were inches away from going up 24-7, and Miami, that was with
that
2
game's
minutes left in the third quarter. It's over at that point in time.
Yeah.
And then Javon Holland punches the ball out. It's a great play, but ETN can't allow it to happen. And that's the only turnover they have so far this year, but they're not creating any. That's part of the problem. And so they gave up the big plays to the Miami passing game, but they still got the ball back late in the game with a chance to drive down and either get a tying field goal or win the game outright in regulation. Same thing with Cleveland this week. The defense let Cleveland just stay on the field for the whole first half. They had 20 minutes time of possession. They had 3 drives, and all of them resulted in points. Now, it was overshadowed by the fact that Trevor Lawrence and the offense only threw for 16 yards in the entire first half. He threw for over 200 in the second half, but by that point, the game was kind of in the balance. Yet, here they were, pretty late in the game. Trevor Lawrence hits Christian Kirk for a touchdown. Extra point's going to put him ahead. Dearness Johnson doesn't line up right. An illegal shift wipes out the touchdown. So again, they're late in the game, about to take a lead in this case, and Cleveland's offense in the second half not doing anything. So Jaguar fans are looking at this like, no matter how badly we played, we could easily be 2-0 right now. Oh, yeah. But even if they were, guys, it would hide a lot of the problems. You take the 2-0 record and you try to figure out your issues along the way, but they've got a lot of issues right now.
Can you guys draw anything off of last year? If I recall correctly, you guys started out 1-2, I think. It was like a bit of a slow start.
Yeah, sounds right.
And then you rattled off like 4 or 5 wins to kind of get you in that position where and then you, to the point you ended up losing a stretch of games later. But can they draw on anything of that? Not the same type of slow start, but starting behind the ball with, I think there was 2 AFC losses too early last year where it puts you behind the ball a little bit in the AFC, losing 2, but then you go in and rattle off 4 or 5 wins. Was it sort of the same where you're kind of losing some close games that maybe you could be in? and giving yourself like, okay, yes, we lost, but we had it, right? We had the game. Now we just got to put it together, play some clean football, and rattle off some wins. You have a lot of the same pieces. Can they draw anything off of the rough, shaky start they had last year? Or is it totally different? Starting out 0-2 is different than starting out 1-2.
I think it's different. It's just a different year, you know. And look, I'm sure they were telling themselves, okay, we lost that game. We should have won week 1. But they came out so flat at home. It's the home opener. How do you do that? It's kind of inexplicable. And again, it's just any given play. It's Trevor Lawrence not seeing an open guy if you go back and watch the all-22, or it's the offensive line allowing quick pressure on a slower developing play in terms of how deep the routes are, or it's a running back, like we just pointed out, making a crucial mistake, or it's Christian Kirk in week 1 dropping what would have been 2 big third down conversions to keep the offense moving and keep the ball away from the Miami Dolphins. And then Evan Engram gets hurt in the pregame last week, and he had killed Cleveland last year, so you figure he's going to be a big part of the game plan. So it's been a different thing with the offense, basically drive to drive, sometimes play to play. So it's frustrating. If it were one thing, you say, all right, we can replace this guy or we can get a handle on this situation. But, you know, sometimes it's play calling. Sometimes it seems to be the scheme. Sometimes it's Trevor Lawrence himself. A lot of times it's been the offensive line. And surprisingly enough, we were more concerned about the interior of the offensive line. They've been pretty solid, right? Including Mitch Morse, who's probably been their best graded out offensive lineman through 2 games. It's the tackles that have been abysmal. If I'm Greg Rousseau, I'm licking my chops this week at how poorly Anton Harrison has played through 2 weeks. He's one of the lowest rated tackles in the National Football League. I think he's 66 out of 71 qualifying tackles in pass protection, which is not what we expected. This is a guy that had a very solid rookie year and has the look of like being a franchise mainstay for a long time to come, but he has come out and not played anything like that so far through 2 weeks.
So obviously you touched on several guys that I want to get back to, including the homecoming of the other 2 guys. But the one I want to get an update on is what's the latest on Evan Engram? Obviously hammies can be, you know, notoriously challenging to bounce back quickly. It's one that you don't really know how bad it is, so you test it full go again, and then if you test it full go, you can have a setback. Obviously, I'm assuming they're going to take it easy early on this week in practice, but any details or updates of how severe it was?
Well, they obviously it happened, and they said it tightened up on him a little bit, and it was just happened right before the inactives were declared. It was actually, we're sitting there on air waiting for them to come. And usually the Jags are one of the most prompt teams in getting those out there. And there was about a 10-minute delay. And I think if it had happened 5 minutes earlier, they would have been able to switch things around and make him inactive and bring another guy up. Not that it necessarily would have affected the outcome, but my guess, and it's only a guess because they didn't practice today with the Monday night kickoff, is that he won't play in week 2, because that's the nature of hamstring injuries. They're usually not a 1 week type situation. And if that's the case, I would expect Brenton Strange to get the majority of looks in the passing game. It's interesting because he doesn't really play much at all. Luke Farrell plays ahead of him as the inline blocking type guy, but Brenton Strange has, they feel, a better package of skills to be a receiving tight end. Obviously, Evan Ingram's going to soak up the targets, but that's what made week 1 so interesting. Evan Engram and Christian Kirk, they couldn't get the ball to them. Both of them had almost no productivity. In fact, Kirk at this point has less than 10 yards receiving on the year. It's
crazy,
inexplicable how ineffective they've been, particularly since Brian Thomas Jr. has been able to stretch the field. You would think that would open up some underneath stuff for these guys, but so far it hasn't.
So let's talk about the homecoming. Cover One has been enormous advocates for both Gabe Davis and Mitch Morse. You know, out of all the things on, you know, we kind of called it Black Wednesday here, where it was the release of Poyer and knowing the, you know, tenuous situation with Micah Hyde and Tre'Davious White and just, you know, other players that maybe didn't have the same situation, Deontay Hardy and others that were expected releases. The one that was the most surprising for most of us, and especially, you know, I pride myself on kind of the salary cap analysis, was, hey, I know that Mitch Morris's number isn't ideal, but they can't release Mitch Morse. That was the one that got me. That was the one that really, really shocked me. And seeing, you know, it warms my heart, but very, very, you know, bittersweet to hear that he's performing as well as he is. He's never had the strongest anchor, but man, that guy can move. He's just such a smooth mover. So far, you guys have been really pleased with what he's brought. Yeah, just awesome in the locker room. They jokingly called him Dad in the locker room. Like he's just what every fan would want in their locker room and with the team.
Well, yeah, we're happy with him so far, and he benefits from the comparison to the rest of the Jags offensive line, honestly, right? But he has graded out very well among guards and pass protection so far this year. And I know he was a highly regarded run blocker in his time in Buffalo. So, we're hoping that, the running game has been a little bit better than it was last year. There's no question about that. But again, it comes down to key situations. Are you able to move teams on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1? They've very small sample size, but they haven't been able to. And this was a concern all off season, but they do like how he's fit in. Look, they needed badly to upgrade. Luke Fortner had a solid rookie season in 2022 as the 3rd round pick, but was pretty bad last year. And so they went this route. They re-signed Ezra Cleveland, who they traded for and felt has a bright future. And, he got here. They had to play him at tackle because they had injuries and he got hurt. And Brandon Sheriff's probably, in the last year of high level effectiveness if he gives you that. But again, like I said, the interior of the line has had its issues at times, but they vastly outplayed the tackles so far.
Yeah, so I want to talk about Gabe Davis because I don't want to talk about Brian Thomas Jr. He terrifies me. So Davis obviously has come in, was brought in. Obviously, you have the departure of Ridley, you have the investment in Thomas. How has that kind of trio come together in, I think some people maybe had a little concern, like, is there overlapping skill sets with Davis and Thomas Jr. in what parts of the route tree they thrive in and how you're going to utilize them. But it just seems like Thomas Jr. for maybe what the draft assumptions was, hey, maybe not fully developed, maybe not mature in his ability here, but long term he has a high potential. He seemed to flash immediately in his abilities to translate and what he brings in the team. Contested catches, just creating separation, and obviously everyone knew the deep speed was there. How has that trio come together in how they've tried to utilize them?
Well, first of all, a lot of people were like, oh, you're going to replace Calvin Ridley with Gabe Davis. Well, that was never the plan. He's the replacement for Zay Jones. And they signed Gabe Davis, and they were still trying to bring Ridley back at that point in time before he opted to go to Tennessee. And so they went ahead and drafted Brian Thomas Jr. And I think it's pretty easy on paper. Brian Thomas Jr. is your field stretcher. And I know Gabe had terrific yard per catch averages every season in Buffalo, but he's not like a 4.3 burner like Brian Thomas is. And he's a big body guy. So they've been trying to get him incorporated in that intermediate, like that 20-yard range. And I think he'll, when they get more opportunities, they're going to look to target him in the red zone pretty heavily as well, because he's a big physical guy. Kirk and Engram should handle a lot of the underneath stuff, even though they try to get Engram to stretch the seam in the offseason. And hopefully when he gets healthy, that'll be a part of the game plan. But look, bottom line, I know you might not want to talk about them, but they need to find ways to scheme up targets for Brian Thomas Jr. at this point. They're one of the offenses that go, we're going to throw it to the open guy. That's fine. Look at what the Giants did last week. They threw it 27 times. 18 of them went to Malik Neighbors. When you've got a guy that has a special talent, and Grant, you're right, he didn't run a full route tree at LSU. But if you're scoring 17 touchdowns and you're killing everybody with a slot fade, why would you have him run the full route tree? They don't care about that. He's been surprisingly adept as a route runner, and he's such a quiet guy that it shocked us all when he got in Jalen Ramsey's face in week 1 when he drew a pass interference at the goal line on him on a deep play. So he has been impactful for this team, leading to touchdowns, of which have been few and far between when they've taken deep shots to him. So I'm of the mind that they need to try a few max protect shots, at least one per half, and force the ball to him a little bit more. I love the idea. Yeah, the open guy is open, but this guy has more raw talent than any other pass catcher on this team, and it's pretty evident.
So my last one here on offense is, I think there was some pretty high expectation with Travis Etienne this year. Obviously in fantasy, people thought of him that way. And I think, I was a big fan of Tank Bigsby coming out, and then, however you want to describe his rookie year, maybe it didn't translate exactly the way people thought, but then it went into this year where it was a complete afterthought. Like, this wasn't a 1A, 1B. This was just, hey, we have a primary bell cow, and maybe it'll be Dearness Johnson, maybe it'll be Tank Bigsby. I can't lie. Like the games I've watched, like Bigsby keeps flashing in his abilities and what's there. How are they balancing that usage in a guy that, maybe offers a little more between the tackles? And obviously Etienne's a weapon in so many facets of the offense, but how are they trying to find ways to get Bigsby more involved?
Well, this week they couldn't because he got blown up on a kickoff return pretty early in the game and missed the majority. He went to the locker room, looked like he might have a broken collarbone. He actually came back, and I think he played a couple of reps on special teams in the second half, but he was out of the game plan. Look, this is one of those deals that, particularly when it comes down to fantasy football, when a guy gets hyped up and he doesn't deliver, that's it. His career's over. We've seen the story. It's been written, right? Well, the guy was laying the ball on the ground, making mental mistakes. He was a rookie last year, so they lost confidence in him. Not in the raw ability that he had, but in terms of executing his assignments. So this offseason had another tremendous offseason. He looked fantastic. He looked good catching the ball out of the backfield. And you saw it in the first game. Even though he played about 1/3 of the snaps to 2/3 for Etienne, they split the carries in that game. And he is going to be the guy that now they've used Etienne at the goal line so far. But I think if Bigsby's healthy, he's probably going to pull a few of those opportunities away. Look, this team, with the pass protection the way it is and the pressure that's been coming quick on Trevor Lawrence, they need to run the football to slow down pass rushes. And that'll enable them to open up the play action game a little bit. So I think Bigsby is a guy that in any given week when he's healthy, he could look for maybe 10 touches. Etienne's going to be in the 15+ range. And Etienne's more explosive, in terms of the pure speed, but there are people who think Bigsby's just a more natural running back, and he has shown an ability to make guys miss in short areas so far this year. That first game, he was extremely impressive against the Miami Dolphins, but look, there's no mistake. Etienne is the lead guy, but they want to work Bigsby in, and they're a believer this year, this coaching staff, and outside of the quarterback and the offensive line, they're trying to rotate everybody to some degree. I think a little too much for my taste at times, but Bigsby, when healthy, is going to have a significant role on this team.
I like it. Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball here. Big level with this defense. Ryan Nielsen, first year defensive coordinator, going into this season. I think the average fan might not recognize a ton of the names along the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. Some of the names, obviously, Josh Hines-Allen is a big one. Trayvon Walker, people know, but some of the other names not everybody knows. But in Jacksonville and in the fan base, kind of what were the expectations on that side of the ball? Because there's so much talk about the offense and Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence and all these names and probably all the weapons. What were the expectations for the other side of the ball for you guys going into this year?
Sure.
First off, how dare you? Everyone loves Foye Oluokun. How dare you?
I do. And that's an example of a guy, though. Foye is a guy that last year played like 99.9% of the snaps for the season. And they're rotating him for like 10 or 12 snaps a game. And it just makes no sense to me, honestly. But here's what I think. They looked at this defense and they looked at Ryan Nielsen's success turning defenses around pretty quickly in the last couple of years in Atlanta and New Orleans before that. And his desire to play man, that he was going to come out with an aggressive scheme that, people don't realize this. Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker had the highest sack total of any two teammates in the National Football League last year with 27.5. I mean, those guys should be feasting. And Hines-Allen was PFF's highest graded edge defender this week. So he had 4 quarterback hits, had a sack, but Trayvon didn't do much. He had 2 sacks in week 1, so they haven't put it all together yet. I think they thought they'd be better in the interior of the defensive line, and that really hasn't come to fruition yet, although they did a good job against Miami. Cleveland came right out and just ran it right at them, and were successful doing that. I know James Cook is not that pound it downhill between the tackles guy like Deontay Foreman can be for Cleveland, but I really don't know which version of the Jaguars run defense is going to show up. They were outstanding week 1. They were pretty bad in week 2. Tyson Campbell, you gave a big contract extension to right at the beginning of training camp. He goes on IR. So your top cover guy is out. Darnell Savage missed the game last week.
I was going to ask, where's he at going into this week? Because that nickel kind of coverage spot's a big one last week.
Too soon to know, Aaron, just simply because they didn't practice today. Doug Peterson didn't speak today, so we're a little bit behind in terms of the intel on that. But what they love about it, you're right, he does play big nickel. He can also play free safety. He's a very versatile piece. And when you've got him out there with Andre Cisco and Antonio Johnson, they're almost interchangeable to some degree. Not that Cisco's going to cover the slot all that much, but Johnson can. And having those two guys down, I don't know. It shouldn't have been that big a deal against the Cleveland Browns team that was without their two starting offensive tackles, looked miserable in the passing game. In fact, Amari Cooper had a bad game against them, and they still found a way to lose this game. That's what's so frustrating. Oluwakun's a good player. Devin Lloyd is off to a good start this season. The other full-time starting linebacker, they're in nickel more than anything. So beyond that,
most of the league at this point.
Right, exactly. Right. Chad Muma and Ventrell Miller don't play all that much, but and then put it this way, the defense is coasting on how bad the offense has looked for the first 2 weeks, no matter what mistakes they've made.
Well, we talk a lot about complimentary football here in Buffalo, and it gets the people hate hearing our coach talk about it, but it goes both ways. When you're playing well, complimentary football can get you, and when you're playing poorly, the offense can put the defense in bad spots, and it makes it look a little bit worse for you. But as we kind of get through here, talked about the defensive line, which I think that front seven is the strength for the Jaguars, at least on paper, when you look at the talent that they have there. But something that I wasn't seeing, at least here the first couple of weeks, is how good that front seven is with what you're actually generating for pressures and the type of pressures that you're generating on a quarterback with the 4-man rush, right? You're not blitzing a ton. You're trying to just send 4, get to the quarterback. Outside of Josh Hines-Allen, you're not getting consistent pressure. Is that just transitioning into this new defense? Because we know Nielsen's been able to get pressure and create turnovers and do all that stuff. Is that just these players transitioning to a new defense, or just, like you said, just not timing it up where Walker and Hines-Allen are both having good games off the edge at the same time, generating a lot of pressures like we were used to seeing last year?
Right. It's only been 2 weeks, so we don't know exactly what the pattern is going to be. But look, I mean, how complicated is this? Go beat the guy who's lined up in front of you. All right. Cleveland's playing their backup right tackle. And at one point, DeJuan Jones goes to the locker room. So Trayvon Walker's going up against the third string right tackle. He had one pressure that I can remember in the game, one play that stood out, and he flushed Deshaun out of the pocket and forced a completion short of the sticks. Good play. Josh Hines-Allen got a lot of pressure this week. You're right. They haven't put it all together. Eric Armstead had a sack in week 1, but, again, they're kind of easing him in as a veteran who missed a lot of time this offseason. I think you put it right, Aaron. On paper, that should be the strength of the defense. Right now, I don't know if I could point to one thing and say this is the strength of this football team through 2 weeks.
It's tough, though. To your point, it's 2 weeks. It's hard to get it's such a small sample size sport to begin with. Then you try to break it down into slivers like 2 weeks. But in that right now, from what we're seeing, another thing that kind of stood out to me about this Jaguars defense is it seems like the trends of defenses are right now sort of that nickel coverage, but you're playing a lot of too high safety looks, a lot of shell zone coverage defenses. But Nielsen really wants to play a man coverage defense. Do you think that philosophy right now, with the way other defenses are playing, works against teams like Buffalo Bills with a Josh Allen? Or is it, we don't want to get him in too much man coverage because he beats man coverage. Like, do you change your core philosophy to play up against a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen type guy? Or you just say, hey, this is what we do, and if we do it well enough, we can slow you down. But we're going to stick to what we do anyway, no matter what the trends of the NFL or how you stop some of these bigger guys that can throw the ball around and extend plays and stuff like that. You just stick to your guns and stay in man.
Well, look, they played more man than any team in the league through 2 weeks, but it's still less than 50% of the time, right? So, it's a 51-49 zone, but it's like 9% more than like the next teams in terms of playing man. What does that result in? Like 3, 4, 5, 6 snaps that are different. Look, I think the thing with Josh Allen and all the mobile quarterbacks out there, if you play man and you turn your head, it creates those running opportunities for the quarterback as everyone's chasing guys downfield. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. Everyone plays with at least one deep safety. I mean, rarely is it just man and send everybody else after the quarterback. But I think Nielsen wants to stay, as long as the health is not decimated on that side of the ball, I think he wants to stick with man as the primary aspect of his defense.
So, Mike, this has been great. We appreciate you coming on here with us. Before we get you out of here, we got to put you on the spot. What do you expect to see Monday night? Give us a score prediction.
I'll pick Buffalo to win. I just can't. I mean, look, I hope the Jags win, and it's the NFL. Anything can happen, but I think it would be malpractice to look at this game and say Jacksonville is going to win this game. It's wish casting to some degree. So, the defense has held teams down. So I'll say something like 23-14 17, something like that. I don't think it's a super high scoring affair. Buffalo was content just to run the ball last week. And again, which run defense shows up for the Jags? But I'm picking the Bills to win it. I hope I'm wrong.
Before we let you kind of tell us a little bit more, if that scenario happens for you guys, just curious minds, does like Peterson's seat get hot? Like what's the scenario if you start 0-3? Where's Jacksonville at?
The owner's already said you got to win this year, right? Whatever that means. Now, if you win the division at 9-8, you have 3 straight winning seasons. That's historically not been a pattern in Jacksonville. So I think you'd be fine in that circumstance. But, look, there are already fans questioning, is Doug Peterson the right guy? They want to blow it all up. And that's how it is.
That's what fans do.
Fans,
our fans want to fire Sean McDermott every year. So
it's
only the winningest coach in franchise history.
That's all.
Yeah, that's it. No big deal. All right, man. Tell us about Jaguars today. What do you got coming up next?
More of the same. Obviously, we won't have a game Sunday to focus on, but we have a revolving series of co-hosts, some former players, some media members. In fact, your guy, Ryan O'Halloran of the Buffalo News, used to be one of those guys back in his time in Jacksonville. And so we're on the air every day, 10 to noon. We stream on, Twitter and YouTube and all the different platforms out there as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. This was great. For great first appearance. We appreciate it. And we'll look forward to having you out again.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hey, man. Good luck this weekend. Stay healthy out there.
This weekend, sure. Good luck to you this weekend. Monday's a new week, though.
That's very true.
Bad luck.
That's right. Appreciate you, Mike. All right, that was fun. That was great to have Mike on for first appearance. And
it's weird because the Jaguars aren't they're not an uncommon opponent. But getting ready for it, even though we played so much recently, still feels like a little uncommon. Just because they're not a team that gets a lot of national games. They're not a team that you are in the spotlight all the time. So it's nice to have somebody on to kind of see where they're at and get the pulse. Even though we've been playing them, it just still feels uncommon to me.
And they're a tough team because this is not the Patriots. This is not the Broncos. This is not the Raiders. This is not a team where hey, come on, you're supposed to win this. This is a gimme. Even the way I described Arizona in our pre-show here, it's the Jaguars are good. They have number 1 overall pick at quarterback. They have first round picks all over the place. They have guys who are. Josh Hines-Allen, the way Mike described it, that's accurate. People don't realize, I think Trayvon Walker had the quietest 10-sack season in history last year. And
Josh Hines-Allen's up there with the top rushers.
No, he should I think you have your very,
Aiden
very
Hutchins,
top
TJ Watt,
of TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons,
Hutchinson's probably in there.
Aiden Hutchinson, that top 4 or 5, I think is in its own little tier, but just barely a half step below there. Josh Hines-Allen is a top 10 pass rusher in the league, and I would bet Jags fans consider him in that top tier, and they're not crazy because he had whatever was 17 and a half, 18 sacks last year. He is a game record that can absolutely wreak havoc.
For us.
He did he beat.
I seen it.
The Josh Allen matchup 2 years ago, whichever one, maybe 3 years ago now. He won that game. He absolutely destroyed us in that game. So this is a game where I almost feel because they've had that success against us, I feel for the team and the locker room and the coaching staff, it's not a trap game. I think they take them very seriously. I think they see them as a very real team because, hey, it's not that hard to say, hey, this team's beat you, whatever it is, 3 of the last 4 times you've played, or maybe 4 straight. I don't even know what that
3 out of 4, yeah.
Yeah, 3 of the last 4 that you've played. This team not only can beat you, they have beat you. You have to show you can beat them. That's an easy message to give in the locker room here to keep everybody focused and paying attention. But for fans, you should look at this as a trap game. This is a tough team that we have to take seriously and play our maybe not A+ game, but we need our A- game to beat these guys. You can't roll out there with some C+ game and think you're going to beat Jacksonville. They have too much talent.
I can't tell, to be honest. I get what you're saying, and I do agree to a point.
Notice I said talent, not coaching.
Yeah, I do. When we're sitting here talking about it, you're talking about all these first round picks and you got all these weapons and things like that. And honestly, it reminds me of Detroit Lions for years until they got Dan Campbell. right? And like until they got real leadership in
this
there.
Is absolutely a team where you tell me next year they get Mike Vrabel or Bill Belichick and the right offensive mind comes with him to do it. This is a team I could absolutely see in the right coach unlock the talent on this roster 100%. I don't think Doug Peterson is that coach. I think Doug Peterson is a greater reason for their 0-2 record when, like Mike said, they'd have flaws, but they could easily be 2-0 and a flawed 2-0 team. They easily could be 2-0, and I think Doug Peterson's the reason they're not.
Yeah, he seems checked out a little bit in some of the, like I went and watched some of the press conferences. There's not a lot going on there. So I don't know what the situation is there, but yeah, no, it's weird. When looking at the defensive side of the ball, there's some vulnerabilities there right now. Like I don't think the talent is as deep as it is on the offensive side of the ball. So they definitely got some work to do on the roster.
Lots of duo. Give me lots of duo, double team those defensive tackles and give me some space.
Yeah, and it's hard to, if your defense is like that in this NFL, especially like that's what I was trying to ask is like, are you going to just kind of stay? Like, yeah, they're playing man more than other teams and it isn't a ton when you have like a 2-week sample size. It is only a handful of plays, but like those plays matter, and like staying in cover one and playing one high safety against a guy like Josh Allen, just like those types of things that I know that they're going to do, even though it's probably not the right thing to do, is what seems to be the things that get in the Jaguars' way, right? Like you're not really game planning specifically to beat the Buffalo Bills. You're just going to roll out there and do what you do. And maybe they will. Maybe they'll beat the Buffalo Bills. I don't know. But on paper, everything I'm looking at feels like there really is no way the Bills should drop this game. And to your point, I think in the locker room, there's like Josh Allen doesn't like the taste of some of the losses that they've suffered to the Jaguars. These are 100%. Ones that should not, to the trap game point. There's enough people in that locker room that have lost to the Jaguars, and it was so embarrassing. Some of the most embarrassing losses we've had in the Sean McDermott era. Yes. That if they lose this, if they do it again, like one, it's a thing for sure. Like there's a thing about it and there's nothing we can control. And we just hope they're never going to be on our schedule again. But two, the whole organization should be embarrassed if you drop another game to this team with how they're playing and the way that they're losing games right now. Like, I get it. At some point, they're going to clean up some stuff and win some games, and they'll go on a run, but it can't start now.
Yeah. So before we get to our William Mattar segment of the show, I feel like the show comments have turned into a William Mattar commercial of their own. There's an entire stretch here of what I look like being here in the hotel. So Mr. Ford, that guy had, Greg looks like the fake Batman jump scare is about to swing, like when the guy like swings and the hanging guy hits the window.
Yes.
Is behind me. Andy here said I look like I'm in a Christopher Nolan movie. I appreciate that. Greg looks like Josh Allen's lawyer. That Kebby was pretty good with that one. Ron getting a little naughty here. Greg looks like he's going to make an indecent proposal. I appreciate that
on
one.
Twitter, there was some OnlyFans comments when you showed the setup.
Yeah, there
like,
were
Greg's
a few.
finally starting an OnlyFans. Yeah.
Greg looks like he's in the opening scene of Fight Club. I appreciate that. Looks like a Bond villain. I thought that was a pretty good one.
Greg looks like he's about ready to manipulate the cap. That was my
That's right. One. That's darn right. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So appreciate you guys. Those were funny. The setup for tonight, we actually debated it pre-show. There's a couple different directions we could have gone. I think that there's some excitement around Christian Benford and how phenomenal he's been. I think there are some really cool things on some of the, different people that are here to help. But I really think, all right. One more, Mr. For that guy got me here. Greg looks like the CEO of the banana stand. That might be the winner there. That one's fantastic. What we decided to go with was, let's kind of talk through this idea that we're running the ball too much, or that we need to lean into the pass. That the Bills are at the top right of every metric. They're top 3 in EPA, their success rate, drive completion. They are the least. Oh my God. Yeah. Wait, I showed you the one earlier today. The Buffalo Bills have run the ball on 2nd and long 0 times this year. Not once, not ever. They are at 100% pass rate on second and long. Nothing warms my heart as much as not running the ball on second and long. They're doing all the efficient things. Eric Turner put out a great thread today of how ridiculously efficient their first down rushing has been so far this season and where they rank top 3, top 4 in every single metric. They're scoring a ton of points. They're converting on first downs. They're converting on their drives. They're punting the least or the second least in the NFL. And I think there's an element where, hey, when you're winning 31-10 pretty early in the third quarter of a game, you don't need to dip into your bag to show what else you possibly could do. You don't get bonus points for winning by 40. Like, there's no reason to show anything else there.
Your fantasy team might, but the Bills don't.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I would. Yeah, my Khalil Shakir shares could have used a little bit more. My Dalton Kincaid shares certainly could use a little bit more. But you don't have to do those things. And I think that if we get into week 10 and we've stagnated because we're super, super run heavy, but when they know you're going to run the ball and we're still doing it effectively, that is the most demoralizing thing in professional football. Yeah. There's nothing more demoralizing than that.
Yeah. The whole argument is driving me nuts a little bit. It's almost like every year we have something, whether I think Josh Allen's second year, it was like, oh, no 300-yard games and like the importance of a 300-yard performance, whatever that means. And like, there's no correlation to the success. Or it was like 20-yard air yard throws. Like he's got this big arm, but he doesn't make 20-yard. That's what this conversation feels like 2 weeks into the season, that the whole league is rushing a little bit more. And that the Bills are in on that. And I just don't get it. I think it's people
effectively, successfully,
super effectively, efficiently. And again, so I think my biggest point is, and my biggest problem is, I love analytics. I think we have this conversation all the time, Greg. Like, I love them. I use them every day. I don't consider myself a stat nerd, even though some people on Twitter will do that because I like to post charts and graphs and stuff. Where I separate from the stat nerd people, in my opinion, is it's not a religion to me. And
can't be a slave to it. You can't be a slave to it.
If I'm building a play call or a game plan against the team, I'm not going to say, well, first down, the efficiency says that passing is more efficient than running every single time in a vacuum. And so that is what I have to do. That is a binary requirement of me because it is more efficient. And that's where I think the stat guys get lost, is the argument becomes, well, passing is still slightly more efficient on these early downs, even though running is catching up league wide. Passing still slightly more efficient, but it's in a vacuum. It isn't Josh Allen led offense seeing too high shell looks where teams are literally more worried about Josh Allen beating them. And so they're going to invite you to run and you're going to run right into those looks. That is just smart game planning. That isn't like going against the tide or anything like that. And then the other thing that frustrates me is the same people that are frustrated by the Bills going with heavier personnel groups, running the ball a little bit more, even though it's successful. They also are the same people that want to fire Sean McDermott and hire an offensive coordinator. And all of the names that I hear that are the top genius names league wide are all in the same area when it comes to early run as the Buffalo Bills and run pass ratios and doing the same types of things. It's Shanahan's, it's Slowick's, it's Ben Johnson's. If you look at the stats, they're all right there with the Buffalo Bills. They're worse.
Bobby Slowick gave Joe Mixon the ball 32 times.
Like
Ben Johnson gives the ball to Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery over and over and over
even
again.
Without McCaffrey. Look at what the 49ers are doing. Like,
he's still giving it to Jordan Mason.
It's just the NFL is shifting. There is a shift. Ben Slowick had a good one where he was just with his eyes looking at like these defenses are inviting offenses to run into light boxes and into lighter defenders. And with those
passing into that is the less efficient result.
Yeah.
Like, you're playing into what they want. Not running is the mistake. Not running is doing the caveman thing because you're just beating your head against the wall. Being, no, I'm going to pass because I want to pass. No, they're giving you, they're giving you 5. It's not even 6-man boxes it's giving you 5-man boxes. You have to run the ball and you can do it. And we are doing it, and we are doing it efficiently. So don't get me wrong. You know, I've talked before. I am fine with a 75-25 pass to run ratio, but that was at the time when it was still traditional defenses, where the Bills were the outlier for being the nickel defense every snap. Now everyone is predominantly nickel. Hell, some of the teams are running dime with 3 safeties and 3 corners as their primary defense. If they're coming out there with 6 defensive backs, you are obligated to punch them in the mouth. This is how football works. You have to zig when they zag. This is just simply the result. It's a numbers game. When you get out there and you're like, hey, there's only 5 guys in front of my lineman and tight end and running back. Hey, we have 6 on 5 plus a ball carrier. You have to bet on those 6 guys.
Yeah. And if there's Brandon Staley, not a great head coach, but he had a great comment when it talked about like he's a big data dude and all that stuff. But what isn't in the data is the physicality that a run game brings into the game. And cornerbacks don't love run support. And so if you force them to come up and play run support, you're going to force them to get physical and force them to try to tackle you. And I think more times than not, offensive coordinators are going to take my running back versus your DB, or my offensive lineman pulling in space versus your DB creating space. Those are just good matchups for you. But one thing you kind of talked about here, and I put a video out on Instagram, because this is one that has really been frustrating.
A great one by RJ.
That some teams have a higher EPA running the ball. That's crazy. Yeah. Well, and also another argument about this is the people take the full league statistics of what teams are doing and be like, well, passing's still more efficient. I honestly don't care about the full league. I just want to know about the top teams, the best offenses. Yes. What are the best offenses doing? And I think the Bills are trending into the same pattern that the best offenses are. So I'm fine there. In with that, Greg, though, real quick, one of my biggest pet peeves, there's a lot of flaws that we can talk about Sean McDermott. There's a lot of things that we can say that he hasn't done right. But one thing I don't think he's gotten enough credit for here as the Buffalo Bills head coach is there's like a almost a narrative about him that he's this old school conservative coach, because he's got that look. He's a tough guy. He's a defensive minded guy. And he's talked about adding physicality in the run game in the past, but he's done nothing but be on the progressive leading edge of almost every trend in the NFL since he got to Buffalo, whether it was nickel defense, kind of bringing that in the NFL, those things that he does on defense with disguising coverages, trend setting, really set the tone for how defenses were operating. And those transitions are what is now leading to the offense transition that he is also at the forefront with Shanahan, Slowick, Ben Johnson. I just don't think he gets enough credit for being at the cusp of those waves and the trends of the NFL. And the Bills do a good job staying on those trends.
Fourth down decision making, timeout usage, the things like, hey, if you guys think it's an accident that we have a 100% pass rate on 2nd and long, where that was one of the biggest bugaboos in any analytical review. Like if you looked at the Bills scorecard, if each of them were like different subjects in school, the Bills were at the top in 4th down decision making, the top in timeout usage. That, you know, he was always low in challenges. He wasn't terribly good at knowing when to challenge. But all the different things on where the analytics said, hey, here's decision-making metrics. One of the areas that they had a flaw and were below the league average was in their run rate in 2nd and long. And that was hey, this is an easy button here. The range of possible outcomes is significantly lower here. Well, they got that input, reviewed it in the offseason, and now we're number 1 in the NFL and the lowest usage of 2nd and long. That is his willingness to take information, receive that, make newly informed decisions, and move forward. He might be a conservative person. He might be a conservative personality. There are plenty of things. Yeah. He is overly controlling. He is his ability to turn anything into a competitive advantage that he can't possibly share any information. There's stuff that he does that annoys me, but the idea that he is not making smart decisions and is hurting this team because of some, like you said, old school tough guy thing, it's simply not the case. None of the data backs it up. None of the data backs it up.
No. And actually, Titan brought up a good point too. Like, hiring an ex-official to be on your staff, what they've done to the data side, the analytics side of the, like hiring a robust analytics department. Like, I don't know. They seem very progressive. They seem on the trend of everything. And it's just one of those narratives that just bothers me is this idea that him wanting to add some more physicality is like dialing the Bills back to the 1940s. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He had an extra bowl of Raisin Bran for his extra treat this week.
That's
it. There is some stuff where he is a hardo. He is, I'm sure, like the jokes about, like, I'm pretty sure he loved being the hall monitor in school. I do think I don't think that he's cuts loose all that often as a person, but none of those things apply to the fact that he takes in the most relevant current information in football and makes modern progressive decisions with that information. Mm-hmm. He does, and all the data backs it up.
Yeah. All right, cool. We're on the same page. I just want to make sure people are giving him some credit for that, man, because that's one that has always bothered me. So
I'll continue to say it. I have no desire to work for Sean McDermott, and I'm also ecstatic that he's the coach of my favorite football team.
Yeah.
Both of those things are 100% true. I'm very comfortable continuing to support that storyline.
Yeah.
All right, man. It's time to put ourselves on the spot here.
I went first last week, so I think it's you.
You did. Okay. All right. As much as there are some people who like to trash Sean McDermott, we have a significant coaching advantage this week. We do. I think Josh Allen's going to make some plays. I think Travis Etienne's going to break a run that's going to annoy me. I'm pretty sure Brian Thomas Jr. is going to break a pass that's going to annoy me. I think we're better than this team. I think this team, the Jaguars, are wobbling. They are getting a standing 8 count right now, and I think there's a chance we're going to put them down for some hard look in the mirror questions that they need to ask themselves. I think there's a chance we beat them pretty good. I do. I think that we're going to cover this spread comfortably. I don't know if it's going to be Dolphins level score, but I think it's in that range, and I think it's going to be 31-13, 31-17. I think that they're going to put up some points, and I think they're going to beat this team. I think that Highmark Stadium is going to be rocking. I think Bills Mafia is going to be fully lubed up here for a 7:30 kickoff on Monday night. I think that I don't predict these very often. This is not a well-coached team right now, and I think the Bills are playing sound, smart football, and they've shown if you are not ready, they will break off big plays, they will get turnovers, and they will put you into difficult spots. And when they get the momentum rolling, they will step on your throat. And I think this is that kind of game where I think this is one where the Jaguars finish and then have to ask themselves some very real questions about where they're going in the future.
Yeah. I don't think I'm far from you. I'm right exactly actually where Troy McClure is. I have 30-17 is my prediction for this one.
Wait, 30-17 or 20-17?
I had it 30-17.
Oh, okay. Oh, Troy. Sorry, I was thinking Mike in my head. I think Mike said 21-17.
Oh no, I'm with Troy here. The comment here.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
30-17. I won. I think we'll get a defensive score in this game. I think we're gonna heat up. I think we're gonna heat up Trevor Lawrence. This is one again. I think
Dwayne Smoot revenge game.
It might be a
Smoot. I'd like to see Smoot active here and get a Dwayne Smoot revenge game.
He's trending that way, and I'm excited.
Sal had some video clips of him practicing.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him as part of this rotation. But I agree with you. I think that they're in a weird spot. I think there's probably some splintering internally, some lacking of confidence in that coaching staff to be able to put them in a position to get the job done. But more importantly is I think that the Bills are focused, very focused early in the year right now. A lot of crap has been talked about Josh Allen this offseason. I think he's hyper-focused. He's got this team locked in. A lot of people have doubted the Bills this offseason. So I think they're locked in differently than they have been in previous years this early in the season. But then you also have the Jaguars. And I think all Sean McDermott has to do is pull up some highlights and maybe some ESPN clips of losing to Urban Meyer, of losing to the Jaguars in London, and doing and then just having these embarrassing moments against the team that you should be beating. And I do think that is enough for the Bills to go out there and put like a pretty good whooping to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because this is almost a statement for the Bills that like, yeah, we're not going to allow these types of games to pop up anymore. And we're not going to let these ones catch up on us or slip. And there is some trap level aspect on the schedule of who's ahead of, hey, this team's reeling a little bit. Let's get through this and on to the next. Sean McDermott.
Going into Ravens, Texans, Jets is a gauntlet of 3 road games. There is, like I said, if this was the Broncos, if the Giants last year, like if this was one of those teams where like, hey, your favorite, I think right now it's a 5-point spread. Your favorite, you're at home, this is an easy game. We can prepare ahead. I think the fact that we've stubbed our toe 3 of the last 4 times is a really easy mechanism for McDermott to keep. Just slap him in the face with that. Like, hey, yeah, you think you're good. These guys whooped your ass. These guys beat you the last couple of times here. He's throwing that in their face over and over and over again.
Yeah. And because of that, I think it might be a party. Prime time in Western New York here on Monday night, which is exactly what we need. It's a nice early night. And then it is on to, if the Bills come out of this early stretch 3-0, that's a little different feeling than when I was first looking at the schedule coming into this next stretch that you talked about here of games. Like you've almost bought yourself a little house of money going into that stretch, which is exactly where they need to set themselves up to be with some of the injuries we've had going into the stretch. Like don't feel good playing the Ravens without Terrell Bernard and the Texans and all those guys. So you got to get yourself the wins where you can here because the schedule is going to get a little harder. So you can't drop games is kind of what I'm saying here.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is
Buffalo Bills going undefeated, and we're going to the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's
at least for the first 3 weeks, right?
Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else for the people here, and before we wrap up?
No, that's it, man. A little weird week here with going from Thursday then to a Monday here early in the season.
11 days, a weird stretch. 11 days.
Especially we had so much fun like packed into the start of the season and then a little bit of a break here. But it's nice because the season came in hot. We had a quick turnaround for that first game. So this was a nice one to kind of relax, get back into the mode. But yeah, no, we're going to be here post game for you. It'll be a nice, easy, early post game Monday night. Hopefully a party here, you and I, after the game. And other than that, man, now we're getting into the meat. Once we get past this next week is going to get, things are going to start to get very serious real quick here.
Absolutely. So as Dano here is saying, press that like button. Appreciate it very, very much. Help us out here. It's the best way to be able to share your neighbors, friends, anyone else that you want to tell about the show. You can tell them, that would be great. But an easy way is just to hit the like button. That's what tells the algorithm to share others. Leave us a comment. Let us know your score prediction in the show comments here on YouTube. Make sure you're sharing it there. Tomorrow night, I am going to be jumping on doing some matchup breakdowns of some of the top games to watch this weekend. So if you want to get yourself ready for Sunday, when you have your full menu of games available to you, you don't have to focus on the Bills. I'm going to help you go through which matchups to focus on here on the Greg Tompsett Football Show. We'll be hanging out there, having a good time. There's all kinds of good breakdowns. Make sure you're checking out the Film Room, Under Review, Air Raid Hour, Roundup, all the great shows along the Cover One network. We're putting together great work for you here and going to be able to be with you all season long. So anything else before we close out?
Real quick, join One Pass. We're having a lot of fun. Right. Become a Cover One Cast member. We're having a ton of fun on Discord here during games, after games. Greg and I have been doing some live stuff leading up to the games on Friday mornings. Slack has always been a great community for Cover One, and now that we've transferred over to Discord, it's even more valuable. It's
given us so many more options.
I feel like the community is growing. It's my notifications are bopping off more than even Slack did, which is kind of crazy. It's just a really cool community to be a part of. And every time I'm talking to Bills fans out there, I'm telling people, like, I hear so often, like, I don't go anywhere near Twitter. I don't have a Twitter. I don't want anything to do with those sites. Facebook, I don't really use it a lot. Football Facebook's kind of dumb anyway. This is a place for people. If you are tuning into this show weekly, if you like the Film Room, if you like our content, that's the place to be. You're going to love it. Yes. So make sure you head over to cover1.net/OnePass. It'll be in the show description. Join up. Get in the Discord, be part of the membership. And it is, Greg, people often ask, like, what can we do? Help your independent network. Yeah. That's it. Join us, give us likes, give us subscribes, all that stuff. But joining us really helps us to deliver this to you. All the where we get our stats, getting our film, all that stuff costs money to keep this thing up and running. And it really is our One Pass subscribers that keep it going.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Really well said. And we appreciate all of you. Lots of people commenting here to be able to talk about how they've already joined and are enjoying it. So come and join them, have some fun. But on behalf of our awesome producer, Chris Kepner, and my co-host, Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.